I'm going to show you how to use the Caltopo app on your phone. So if you click on your Caltopo icon on your phone, you're going to come up with a screen. Maybe it looks like this. And the first thing that I always do when I open up the app is I want to decide which base layer that I'm going to use, which base map I'm going to use. So in the upper right hand corner of your screen, there's an icon that looks like three sheets of paper stacked on top of each other. So if I click on that, this is where I come up with my scroll down menu for all sorts of base layers, as well as all the map overlay possibilities. So right now what I've got chosen is the NAIP layer, and that's the National Agriculture Imagery Program. So that is one of your options for satellite imagery. If instead you want to go and find a Forest Service map, for example, you can choose that as your base layer, and then that's what your screen is going to look like. Okay, so those are your choices to make. Now, because I've already created a map on my computer that I want to access on my phone, because, for example, I can do that in the field, even if I don't have service when I'm out in the field, I go up to the upper left-hand corner of my screen where there's just three horizontal bars. And if I click that, a number of things pop up, one of which is maps. So at the top, I can choose maps that I've already created. So here's the list of maps that I've made and saved to my own account. So I'm going to choose the fall trek map that I've created. And when I do that, it immediately switched over to the Forest Service base layer map, but you could choose to change it to the satellite imagery if you want. Uh, it might, when it pops up at first, look something like that if your map is as messy as mine. Um, what I like about creating a map like this is that I can add a ton of geographic information. So, for example, I add a note here, avoid this whole section of trail in bad weather. So that's a section of trail that I know would not be ideal if you had very high winds and rain because there's very little cover. And so I also created another route note on here that this route down White Rock Creek is a quick route out of the high country. So I can add information to my maps and to my routes. I can also, just like in on a computer, click on a route that I've highlighted and then get information about it. This particular quick route out of the high country is a 2.94-mile leg, and if I want, I can look at a profile of it. This is obviously very vertically exaggerated because I've got the phone in a um, portrait mode. But this gives you that profile showing the range of elevations, the elevation gain and loss, and then what the vertical exaggeration is. So those are handy things to do. Now, one thing you may want to do is get rid of some of this information. When I made this map recognizing that we were going to have two separate groups, each traveling in a different direction. And so, for example, here I've identified these red dots or campsites for groups 1 and 2, but you can see that group 1 should be there on September 17th, and group 2 would camp in the same general area on September 24th. So if you're group 1, you may want to get rid of all of group 2's data off of this map because it's of no interest to you at the moment. So you can go up to the top icon that looks like a little file folder with a location teardrop and click on that. And so here, this shows you all of the bits of geographic information that I added to the map. So you could get rid of, for example, if you just wanted, if you're in group 2, let's say, and you don't care about where group 1 is going to be, go ahead and just click off all of group 1's routes. Then when you go back, your map looks a little simpler. It's still got all my notes on it, but you can see that the routes there there's only one color, right, running around this whole map because now it's only group 1's routes. So those are two super handy things you can do. One other thing I would point out is that you can still use the ruler function or the measurement function. So if you want to measure a distance on this map, let's say you're just trying to understand, how far is it to get from this point in your trip down to here, I can just go ahead and um, follow that line down. And once I've double clicked on it, I can see that that part of the hike is only 2.48 miles. So that might be something you need to do while you're still in the field. The other really nice thing about this that you can do in the field, and again, as long as you have cell coverage at home and you scroll down in as far as you can to your map, to get as much detail as you can, and then sort of walk yourself around the whole map. By the time you get out in the field, even if you don't have cell service, this should have saved as a cached version in your device, and you'll still be able to get location information. The other thing that's handy is that if I'm gonna, let me scroll back out here for a minute. If I find a point that I'm interested in, like I made a note to myself as I was hiking out that there's cell service at that exact point right there. This is a little bit of a mess, but if I click on that cell service point, one thing you can see is that the information that pops up gives me the UTM coordinates. And it gives me UTM coordinates because I asked it to. I didn't ask it to give me lat long, but I can change that in my settings. So if I need to let somebody know, hey, I know for sure that you can get cell service if you hike up to this exact location, uh, I can tell them what that exact location is in UTM coordinates. So if I click on the position and elevation, it'll give me the elevation, slope, and aspect, but it'll also give me lat long information in 3 separate formats. So that's a good way for you to be able to share information about your position with somebody else while you're still out in the field or when you're, sitting in your office. Okay?